Alright, adding and subtracting negative numbers on a number line. So you guys might remember that we had some rules for adding and subtracting negative numbers, right? When the numbers have the same sign, right? We add the numbers and keep the sign. So if we had something like -2 plus -7, that would be -9. Right? It's 2 plus 7, keep the sign. But then when the numbers had different signs, we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So if we had something like -11 plus 17, we'd subtract and we'd keep the sign of the larger number. So that would be 6. So these were our rules for adding, right? And then when we subtract, right, or subtracting, I guess I should say, we follow those same rules. It's just that we first change subtraction to addition. So for example, if I had 3 minus 7, I would change that to 3 plus -7. I kind of think of it like this. I can make a minus into a plus as long as I then add that little negative there. So I'm always going to make 2 strokes of my pen, right? So I'm always, if I make this into a plus, I also have to make a minus sign there, right? So -3 minus 7, it's not going to affect this first number, right? I'm only going to be changing the second number, -3 plus -7. So if I'm subtracting a number, it's the same thing as adding a negative. But if I had 3 minus -7, how would I change that into addition? Yeah, the minus a negative means plus, so that would be 3 plus 7. And remember we did that sometimes by kind of drawing a big plus sign. Same thing if I had -3 minus -7, that all of a sudden turns into -3 plus 7. And then I can follow these rules, right? If I have the same signs, so which ones have the same signs? 3 plus 7 and -3 plus -7. You see that those have the same signs? For those I would do 10 and -10. If they have different signs, so these two, I subtract and I keep the larger number sign. So this one would be 4, but since 7 is larger, it would be -4. This one would be 4. Since the 7 is positive, it's a positive 4. We'll erase this funny quote that one of our alumni who was here for an open house last night left that as a nice message for you all this morning. Alright. So those would be my answers for these problems here. So when I'm subtracting, I have that extra step. Today I want to show you a different way of thinking about this. Because I think while these rules will always work, I think they can be a little bit confusing. And honestly, when I'm adding and subtracting negative numbers, I'm sort of thinking of these rules. But the other thing that I always have in my head is the number line. Right? So I want to talk about how these types of problems look on a number line. For example, if I had something like 6 plus 8. This is the type of problem that you guys have been doing since first grade. On a number line, we could do it like this. Here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this number. Right? And you can kind of imagine like a little guy. Here's my little guy. Right? Hi there. The plus tells us which direction to face. Right? So this little guy is going to face forward. Is facing forward. And then this tells us how many steps to go. Go 8 steps. So if I start at 6 and I go 8 steps, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So he's going to end up over here. The little dude, he jumps from one number to the next, right? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So do you see what I mean when I'm like transferring this over to the number line? This one, I mean, you can probably do this in your head, but I just want to show you what it means on the number line. We're starting here, we're facing forward, we're going 8 steps. So then what happens if we have negative numbers? Right? So what if it was like negative 5 plus 10? So we're going to make our number line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So where are we starting on the number line of this problem? We're starting at negative 5, right? This is our starting point. So here's my little guy. Oops. For some reason I made him an A. He's facing forward, and he's going to go 10 steps. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we end up at 5. It's the same answer that we would get if we followed those rules, right? Different signs, so we subtract the numbers and keep that sign. But this explains why we get it, right? We're starting over here at negative 5, and we're moving 10 steps in the positive direction. So that gets us all the way over to positive 5. Right? What if I had something like this? Negative 6 plus 3. So on my number line, where do I start? Start at negative 6, right? And then I'm going to go 3 steps forward. 1, 2, 3. So I'd end up at negative 3. Right, it's the same thing as subtracting and keeping the sign of the bigger number. But I think if you really think about this, it helps you see why that rule works. Why does it work? Well, it's because we're starting over here at negative 6. This number is not big enough to get us past 0. So our answer has to stay negative. We know that our answer is going to stay negative. We're not going enough steps to get positive. right? At the same time, this number works against what we're doing. Because we're at -6, so this number is positive. We're going in the positive direction. We're stepping towards 0, so we get to -3. Right? So it's always helpful to kind of picture this number line in your head as you're adding and subtracting negative numbers. And if we have a negative number here, how do we translate that into the number line? Right, here's 0, -1, 2, 3, 4, that's -4, -5, -6, -7, 8, 9. This would be -10. And we're going to actually need one more number here. So where do I start? I still start here. And then if I can imagine my little guy, the plus is telling me to face forward. But the -5 is telling me to go 5 steps backward. Okay? So this negative is saying go backwards. So even though I'm facing forwards, I'm going to go backwards. Plus says face forward, negative says go backwards. And so I'm going to go 5 steps backwards. 1, 2, 3, 5, which takes me to -11. Okay? So you can think of these negatives here as just telling you like which direction you're facing and which direction you're going. If I had something like this, -7 minus -4. This negative is telling me face backward. But then this negative is telling me go backward. So in other words, if I face backward but then go backward, so here's my guy. Now he's facing this way, but he's going to go backwards. So he's going to go 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, which would put him at -3. So the minus a negative, we could think of it as plus, or we could think of it as this guy kind of turning around and then walking backwards down, or hopping. I like to picture him hopping down. So we're at -7. We're going to go 4 steps that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we get to -3. Does that make sense? So what's happening here, if we think about the rules, is that it's really -7 plus 4, which means they have opposite signs. And so we subtract and we get -3. But this kind of explains why, right? What I'm hoping you see is the reason that this makes a plus is because he's like facing and then going backwards. He's like turning around and then turning around again. If we picture that movement down the number line. It's like turn around and then turn around again. So in other words, you didn't even need to turn around, right? He could have just gone forwards, which is what we would have done with the plus. We would have thought of it as -7, right? And then just go 4 steps. Because it's plus 4. So these are the same thing. It's just this one's like turn around and then turn around again. And this one's just saying, oh, you don't really need to turn around. Questions on this? Picturing the number line as you do these? I think it can be really helpful to have it in your head, because if you can't remember the rule, you can think about which way am I going down the number line, right? Where am I starting In which direction am I going? Now, where this becomes kind of impossible is when we have huge numbers. What if I had negative 120 minus 68? I am not going to draw that number line. There's no way you're going to get me to do it. But what I would do is I would picture the number line. If I picture a number line in my head, I know zero's here. Where is negative 120? It's like somewhere way down here, right? I don't need to draw all the numbers in between. And then minus, I know that why do I keep doing that? I know that I'm facing this way, right? I'm facing negative. I'm facing in the negative direction. So if I'm facing in the negative direction, and then I go 68 steps, what happens after one step? I get to negative 121. After 2 steps, I'd be at negative 122. I'm not going to go 68 steps because I can picture in my head, oh, I'm just adding 68 to 120. Each step that I go is getting me one further down the line. So I know that my answer is just going to be further negative, and it's going to be 100. Oops, that's a really weird 8. 188. Right? Because I started at negative 120, and I just kept going further negative down that number line. So it's negative 188. Right? If we have really big numbers, right? If I had something like, 72 plus negative 154. This one is even harder in a way, but I can think of it like this. Here's 0. 72 is somewhere over here. All I really have to decide here is which direction is this guy going to walk down or hop down or jump down the number line? Is he going to go that way or is he going to go this way? Well, the plus says to face this way, but the negative tells me to go backwards. And how many steps am I going to go backwards? 154.
Yeah,
so if I'm at 72 and I go 154 steps this way, where am I going to end up on the number line? Yeah, I'm going to end up somewhere in the negatives, right? I'm only at 72 and I'm going 154 steps backwards. So I'm definitely going to pass 0. And then I just have to figure out, well, where do I end up? So I think about it. 154 minus 72, right? That's 82. This works because I know I'm going 154 steps. It takes 72 steps to get to 0, and then it takes 82 more steps, right? Yeah, so our answer is negative 82. Because I started positive, but I went really far negative, and so I got to negative 82. Okay? So even though I'm not actually counting steps anymore, I'm still picturing, like, where am I starting, which direction am I going, and then where am I going to end up? And that'll just help you. If you can't remember all those rules all the time, it kind of helps you figure them out again. Right? Okay. Let's pause the video.